Sometimes what you discover turns out to be worse than what you initially thought. As I lay in the darkness staring at the ceiling, I guessed it was probably around 2 in the morning. I got up, looked at the bars, and reflected on how drastically my life had changed. In less than 24 hours, you see, I was in a holding cell at the 3rd Police Precinct in the city center. I'm accused of damaging personal property and threatening someone with an aluminum bat. This morning my wife and sister tried to post bail for me, but I told the jailer that I had made other arrangements and asked them to leave. I was afraid that if I saw them I might cause them physical harm. So I'm sitting here cooling my heels and wondering what my next move will be. My name is Steve Muir. I'm 39, soon to be 40. I work at an insurance company as a property appraiser. I've been working there for 12 years and I make a decent living. Sue, my wife of 17 years, works in an office downtown, and we have one son, Kevin, who is also 17 and can sometimes be quite difficult. You see, we were a typical suburban family and quite happy until yesterday. We had a date night, or better yet, a weekend plan for Saturday and Sunday. This week, you see, a couple of times a year my wife would send our son to her parents for the weekend, giving us 2 days to ourselves. Sue started doing this some time ago so we could have time to reconnect with each other. Usually she would go out with my sister and a few friends on Friday evening and return shortly before midnight. Then the real fun would begin. Take it easy with them. Honey, my wife said to our son, remember, they're not as young as they used to be, and I don't want you to hurt yourself or get sick on the rides. Do you hear me? She warned him. The two of them packed his things on Thursday evening, and by 9 o'clock he was ready for the trip. I told Cindy that I want to be home by 11:30 p.m. on Friday. Sue told me I really need this weekend. Things have been so hectic lately, and it'll be great to relax and have some uninterrupted fun. She smiled at me. I'm not planning to wear clothes all weekend. I don't think you'll mind, she said as I started to chase her around our bedroom. That sounds perfect. On Friday I'm meeting a new client, and if they sign the contract, we'll have something to celebrate. I told Sue, well, save your energy, because you're going to need it this weekend. She told me as she tried to get ready for bed, but I grabbed her by the hand. You know the rules, no sex tonight. Tomorrow night you'll get all you can handle. She told me on Thursday night I had trouble falling asleep a couple of times. I sneaked over to kiss and touch Sue a little. She told me to get back to my side of the bed and go to sleep. Eventually I rolled over to my side and fell asleep. I knew Friday would be busy, so I got up early. I kissed my wife while she was still in the shower, grabbed her by the backside, and ran out of the bathroom before she could throw the wet sponge she was holding at me. I went downstairs, hugged my son, and told him to behave himself over the weekend and that we'd see each other on Sunday evening. Then I dashed out, not caring about anything else in the world, and sped down the road. This morning everyone was in a good mood, and how could it be otherwise? It was Friday and payday. I reviewed the proposal. I was set to present later in the day, and finally received approval from management after 2 minor changes. The proposal was to insure a country resort. The resort was worth around $10,000 them, sir, and the policy would give our company a significant boost, especially in the current economic climate. Don't mess this up, my boss Tom said around 3:30. What time is your meeting with them? He asked. He wants me there around 6 orange so we can inspect the rooms, after they check in the Friday guests. I told him how much leeway do I have regarding the rates I asked, not much if necessary. You can lower it by 3%, but no more than that. Don't worry, I won't leave without a signature, I assured him. I wrapped up my work at the office and left around 5:30. It was only a 25-minute drive to the city center, but the route was scenic along the lake, so I took my time and enjoyed the view. I arrived at the resort at about 10 to 6 and took another look at the rooms before heading inside. Steve, you made it, Rick said, extending his hand. How was the drive? Great, you really have a beautiful place here. I replied. It must be very quiet here at night, I asked. Except for the loons and owls, you could hear a pin drop. A lot of people come here just to get away for the weekend. We're close enough to the city, but far enough to escape the urban hustle. There's no TV, radio, or cable in the rooms, so there's nothing to distract you. Our restaurant is open until 8, or we were on, and there's music in the lounge until midnight. Rick told me it looks like you have a little gold mine here. I said to him, ready to take a look at a few rooms. I asked, and that's exactly what we did. For the next hour he showed me around. We made a few adjustments, and by 7:30 we had reached an agreement. In the end, I gave him a discount of about 1.25%, which was well within the permissible range. He signed. I signed and his wife notarized the contract. "I'm glad it's all done," he said to me. "How about dinner before you head back and maybe a bottle of wine to celebrate our new agreement?" Rick asked. I agreed and we went to a corner of the restaurant and sat in a private booth. "There aren't many people here," I said, just making small talk. "It's still a bit early. Most people arrive here around 7 angle, and my wife usually settles everyone into their rooms by 830. If you like meat, try the steak. It's simply outstanding and my chef grills it to perfection over an open flame." We had an excellent meal and enjoyed each other's company. "I would love to have a place like this," I told him. "It seems like there's plenty to do here, but at the same time it's really enjoyable. I love working with people, and running something like this would really appeal to me in our economy. Business is tough. We make money, but not a lot. If we didn't live here and do 95% of the work ourselves, we would never make it. But I love what I do." I was full and didn't know how I managed to finish that steak. I also declined dessert and just sipped a little brandy after dinner. "It's time for me to go," I told him as we decided to take one last tour of the place. At that moment, the life I knew ended. We were standing in the doorway of the lounge watching the couples dancing when I thought I recognized someone. I was looking at a particular couple when Rick said, "Those are the Carrolls. They come here a couple of times a year for dinner and then head to the dance floor. I'd love to have something like that to hold in my arms right now." He told me I would too. I thought to myself, because if my eyes weren't deceiving me, that was my wife Sue with her old college boyfriend Bill Carroll. When they turned and walked back to their table, I was certain of it. So this was Sue and Cindy's girls' night out. I said to myself, I watched as they laughed, drank, and returned to the dance floor for a slow song. The only reason I didn't storm over and confront them both was that I was standing next to Rick and needed to at least appear professional. "Rick, I need to get back home. I have a lot to do tonight and it's already almost 10 to. I want to thank you again for the business and I know you won't regret choosing our company," I said to him as I stepped away from the door. "Pick a weekend and bring your wife. You'll be my guest a weekend. Here will do wonders for your personal life," he said, winking at me. "I can guarantee it." We shook hands once more and I got in my car and drove away. I returned to the city in a daze. How long has this been going on was the first question on my mind. Sue was dating Bill when we first met in class. They had been together for most of 2 years, and what started as a lively discussion in sociology. Class turned into a lunch or two at the student union, and eventually into dinner. She was torn between Bill and me until I put my foot down. "Sue, make up your mind. It's either him or me. I'm not going to share you." I gave her my ultimatum. She broke up with him 2 weeks later, and we immediately became a couple. Hell, we were like rabbits having sex on our first dated. We went to Outback Steakhouse and spent Saturday and all day Sunday in bed. It wasn't even a month later when Sue found out she was pregnant. At that moment, there wasn't even a question of what to do with my grandmother's ring in hand, and on one knee I proposed to Sue. She said yes, and a month later we were husband and wife. Do I regret how it all happened? Not really. I had the woman of my dreams, and 8 months later we had a bouncing baby. Everyone pitched in and we managed just fine. We weren't wealthy, but we were happy nonetheless. That's how it had been from day one. Even after all these years, we found time to be intimate at least 3 times a week, and I always considered myself a happily married man. I never doubted that my wife felt the same. At least that's what I believed until about an hour ago. Sue wasn't home when I arrived. Thank God. I went to the computer and Google. Bill Carroll computers are amazing. There's an enormous amount of information you can get with just a few keystrokes. Take Bill, for example. Now I know he lives about 45 minutes away from us in the same town as ours, cross-referencing his name and address. I found out that he's married to someone named Ruth. If he has a wife, what the hell is he doing with mine? And how long has this been going on? I asked myself. I noted his address and decided to pay Bill a little visit, and I went upstairs and started changing into something more casual. When my anger boiled over, I threw my suit on the floor and punched the bedroom door. That cheating bastard, I yelled. No wonder she didn't want to fool around on Thursday night. She wanted to be fresh for her lover. My mind kept repeating over and over. I grabbed the mattress, dragged it down the stairs, and threw it out the front door. A little gasoline from the garage and it was ready. I removed my wedding ring, taking some skin with it, because it was so tight, and with a butcher knife. I pinned it to the kitchen table where she couldn't miss it. Then I took my jacket, closed the door in my perfect marriage, and stepped out onto the front lawn. I flicked the lighter and set the mattress on fire, got in my car and headed to the next stop. The door was opened by Cindy's husband, David. "Hey, Steve. The girls aren't back yet, but come on in," he said. "Want a beer?" he added, heading to the fridge and grabbing me a cold one that would be great. I replied, "By the way, where did the girls say they were going?" I asked him. Cindy didn't say much. She just mentioned she'd be home by 1:30 and that's it. I looked at the clock. It was getting close to that time. "What do you need from Cindy?" "Maybe I can help you out," he said, trying to be helpful. "No, this is between Cindy and me." I told him, trying to contain the anger that was eating me up inside. We chatted for about 20 minutes before we heard Cindy's car pull into the garage. When she walked into the kitchen, she looked a bit surprised to see me. "Hey, brother, I thought you'd be home waiting for Sue," she said as she approached me. Neither she nor David expected what happened next. Cindy was getting up from the floor, rubbing her cheek, while David was yelling at me, asking what the hell was wrong with me. When I finally spoke, "Never speak to me again. Don't call me and don't even email me. You're dead to me from this day forward. Do you understand?" I shouted at her as David grabbed my face. "David, leave him alone." It was all she said. "Steve, it's not what you think I can explain," she started to say before I stopped her. "What the hell are you doing? Have you lost your mind? I've already called 911 and you better leave before they get here." He yelled at me. "Come out here, Bill, and we can settle this like men, unless you're going to stay the coward you've always been." Hey, idiot. Does your wife know you're cheating on her? Maybe we should just swap wives and we'll call it. Even I shouted for the whole world to hear as I approached the front door. Bill slammed and locked the door, but that didn't stop me. I smashed the etched glass window at the top of the door and the lights on either side. When I heard the sirens of approaching police cars, I dropped the bat, raised my hands above my head, and walked toward them. One of the officers handcuffed me while another went into the house to make sure everyone was okay. I saw Bill talking to him and his wife peeking out from behind the curtains. I shouted again, "Tell your wife how great my wife is." "Bill, I'm sure she'll be interested to know where you were tonight," I said, looking directly at her. I was thrown into the back seat of a patrol car and taken to the city. It was too late to do anything tonight, but tomorrow I was told I'd be able to post bail after the charges were filed. And so here I am sitting in a cell thinking about what's next in my life. My only sister is now dead to me because she had been covering for Sue all this time. The worst part is I never saw it coming. I guess I was happy, oblivious, and too trusting. The next 4 hours gave me plenty of time to realize that this had been going on for at least a year, maybe longer. I suspect that the weekend sex was just a cover for her cheating on me. By 6 a.m. I had calmed down considerably. I was still damn angry, but the initial shock had worn off. On Saturday morning I appeared before the judge and listened to the charges. My bail was set at $2,500 and I was allowed one phone call. I called my boss Tom. "What the hell is going on?" Tom asked when he posted my bail. "What did you do?" I gave him a brief version of the story while he drove with his mouth open, not believing a word. I said, "Where do you want me to drop you off?" He asked. I gave him Bill's address, hoping my car was still there, and thankfully it was. I felt like ringing the doorbell and starting all over again, but I knew I didn't want to spend another night in jail. I saw the curtains move, but this time no one came to the door. I couldn't go back home, so I checked into the nearest hotel. A holiday and close-to-work breakfast at Denny's almost brought me back to life, or at least filled my empty stomach. Last night I wanted answers, but now I didn't care anymore. I turned on my cell phone and found 5 messages from my sister and 10 from Sue. I listened to one from my sister, where she said that things weren't what they seemed and urged me to call Sue, because she was worried about me too late. I thought to myself Sue's messages were more of the same. "Please call me so I can explain everything," she pleaded through tears, but I wasn't in the mood to talk to her. I deleted the remaining messages and turned off my phone. On Sunday I got drunk, but not before leaving the house to buy a few things to wear to work on Monday. Over the past 8 years, I hadn't drunk more than 4 bottles of beer at a time, but today I managed to finish off almost 12. Everything was fine until I threw up everything in my stomach and passed out on the bathroom floor. That's how much of a drinker I was on Monday. I was a little late to work, and as I walked past Tom's office, he stopped me. "You look like crap, but under the circumstances I can't blame you," he said. "If there's anything I can do, just let me know." He added. I handed him the signed contract. At least something good came out of Friday night. I weakly smiled at him. I've told the secretary to screen your calls and take messages for the next few days, and security has been instructed not to let your wife in unless you give the okay, so grab a cup of coffee and tell me what you had to do to get that signature on Friday. Tom said. To me, Monday was rough. I was busy rewriting the new contract and sending it off to the corporation. I received a lot of praise, but it didn't make me feel any better. Security informed me that they had kept Sue from entering and asked if I wanted to continue barring her. I said yes. I rarely traveled, but the one thing I hated when I did was eating alone, no matter how good the food was. Eating alone was unpleasant. Instead of Denny's, I went to Olive Garden tonight. I sat at a table for two at the back of the restaurant and had a good meal, but a bottle of wine would have made it better. I wasn't much of a drinker, but over the last 2 days I had consumed 2 weeks' worth of alcohol, and it hadn't improved my mood one bit. On Monday evening, I started making plans. I didn't trust Sue, and knowing my luck, she'd drain our savings and checking accounts. I got out my laptop and logged onto the bank's website. Thankfully, the funds were still there. I made a note to withdraw half the money tomorrow at lunch and open a new account. I couldn't change my medical account, but I could definitely alter the company insurance policy and my 401k. I transfer both to Kevin in case anything happened to me. When the phone rang, I remembered I had forgotten to turn it off after checking the messages. The call I answered was from my father. "All right, where the hell are you?" he asked. "I guess we skipped a hello and how are you stage in a motel near work," I replied. "You know, I've got 2 crazy women in my house right now. They're crying and telling your mother and me that what you saw on Friday night wasn't what it seemed." He said, "Seriously, I can't make sense of what they're saying, but it's clear Cindy and Sue have been lying through their teeth for a while. Are you in the mood to come here tonight and sort this out?" My father asked, "Not really. I saw what I saw, and there's nothing Sue can say to explain it." "I'm sorry they dragged you into my mess, Dad. But if you'd seen what I saw, and it was Mom, you'd have kicked her to the curb too. I just feel bad for Kevin. He's going to get caught right in the middle of this." I told him, "Well, son, do what you have to do and call your mom this week. She's really upset about all this." I thanked him and apologized again for putting him and Mom in the middle of this, especially because of Cindy. But I reminded him that it was their actions that brought all this upon themselves. I hung up and turned off my phone. The rest of the week was a mess. I received a million messages from Cindy and Sue, but I just deleted them without bothering to read them. I planned to call Mom or visit on Friday, but only if Cindy wasn't there. I called my son on Thursday evening, and he told me that his mom was devastated and hadn't gone to work all week. He said that she asked him to tell me if he spoke to me that she loves me and needs to see me. I thanked him for the message but told him that it wasn't going to happen. "What did Mom do?" my son asked me. I asked her, and all she said was that she met someone from her past, and that's it. Then she started crying again, and that was the end of it. He told me I told him I'd probably see him this weekend, but I couldn't say exactly when I knew I'd have to face 2 eventually, but I wasn't looking forward to it. Saturday was unbearably dull. I spent extra hours at work fully engrossed in my tasks. There was nothing on TV and I was tired of being holed up, so I decided to take a chance and drive home. Damn was all I could say when I saw Sue's car in the garage. To hell with it. I needed a couple of changes of clothes, so I didn't hesitate and walked into the house. Kevin was in the kitchen making lunch and I gave him a big hug. "You know, Mom's upstairs, right?" he said, almost expecting me to dash out the door. "I can't hide forever," I told him, grabbing a cup of coffee. He filled me in on what had been going on and asked if I was planning to come back home. "I don't think that's going to happen, at least not anytime soon," I replied. "But if it does, you'll be the first to know," I said, trying to smile. I finished my coffee and decided to go upstairs and get it over with. As I climbed the stairs, I noticed that nothing was coming from our bedroom. I opened the door and walked in. What a mess. Sue was sound asleep on the bedspread, dressed in sweatpants. Her hair was dirty and greasy, and she looked just awful. I walked over to my closet, opened the door, and started pulling out a few things. When Sue woke up, "You're back," she exclaimed. "Not for long. I just came to grab a few things," I told her as she sat up on the bed. "I missed you," she said, now with tears in her eyes. "What's the matter?" "Bill not giving you enough," I said sarcastically. "Steve, you have to believe me. I never slept with him," she said. Seriously, I only saw him a couple of times a year, and it was just for dinner. Sue, I was there. I saw you. Why can't you for once in your life stop lying? You were laughing, drinking, and dancing with him. What was that? Did I imagine it? All I know is that it was the worst nightmare of my life. I said to her, so just go back to sleep while I grab my things and get out of your hair, and you can do whatever you want with Bill. I don't care anymore. Maybe you can have a threesome with his wife so she doesn't feel left out. I yelled at her. His wife already knows and has known for a whole year. She replied, now staring at the floor, and she doesn't care. What kind of idiot is she? I asked. Maybe she's okay with sharing, but I'm definitely not. She screamed. Sue, I don't need this crap. Do whatever you want. I don't care anymore. I said, turning back to pick out clothes for the next week. Steve, I need to tell you something, and I know you're going to hate me for not telling you sooner, but I've been keeping it from you for too long, Sue said in a voice barely above a whisper. Do you remember when that girl was kidnapped last January at Kevin's school? They set up an identification database for each student. They did a swab, took a hair sample and fingerprints. I thought it was a great idea, but when I provided his blood type information from our home records, I noticed something. Without your knowledge, I had some tests done, and I found out something terrible, she said, sobbing. Kevin is okay, right? I asked, now more than a little worried. Yes, he's fine. But I discovered something I never knew, she said, hesitating, and I asked, what did you find out, Sue? I asked again. She was openly crying. Now I found out that you're not Kevin's father, she said, sinking onto the bed. I was in shock, leaning against the dresser, and I thought things couldn't get any worse. Are you sure? Did you verify this? I asked, furious. I had the test done twice, and both times the results were the same. She told me I tracked down the only other person I'd been with, and when he sent me a cheek swab, the result was positive. I'm so sorry, Steve. I never knew, she said, continuing to cry. Let me guess, Bill is his father, I said, as if trying to spit out something vile. He wanted to meet Kevin and talk to him, but I refused. I made a deal with him to stay in the background. I would meet with him a couple of times a year and provide him with full information, including photos and such, to keep him quiet. Bill was thrilled to have a son because he and his wife had 2 girls. Bill told his wife about Kevin, and she made him promise not to show up or tell Kevin who he really was if he wanted to stay married to her. Sue, you broke up with Bill and started dating me. What the hell were you doing sleeping with both of us? I asked. When Bill came to pick up the rest of his things, he was upset that I had left him for you. We had a few drinks, and the next thing I knew, we were in bed. I swear to God it was only that one time, and I didn't know Kevin was his. You have to believe me. She pleaded, and Cindy knew all about this. I asked. I told her and asked what I should do. She said you would lose your mind and that it would be the end of our marriage and family. She told me to give Bill what he wanted and keep my mouth shut, that way no one would find out. I'm sorry, Steve. I told her you wouldn't leave us, but she said you hated Bill so much that you disowned Kevin and me. I don't know why I didn't trust my instincts, she said to me. So you've been meeting with him behind my back since last year and using my sister to cover for you, is that about right? I asked. Sue just nodded, staring at the floor after. 17 years you didn't trust me enough to tell me, and instead you decided to lie to me. What were those special weekends? Were they just to make you feel better about lying to me? You make me sick, Sue, I said, almost spitting the words at her. No, Steve. They started long before I found out those weekends were ours, no one else's. Please believe me, she said, reaching out to me. Don't touch me, don't ever touch me again, I shouted at her. Our entire marriage has been a damn lie. I thought things were bad when I believed you were cheating on me. But now I find out that my son isn't even my son. Why didn't you just put a bullet in my head? Does Kevin know? I asked. No, I haven't told him, and there's no reason for him to know. You are his father, and you always will be. Bill was just a biological donor. You're the one who taught him to ride a bike, played baseball, and gave him his first car. You're more of a father than Bill could ever be. He never has to know about Bill. There are only 4 people in the world who know, and none of us will tell him. You will always be his father, and no one else needs to know. So now you want me to start lying too. It's not enough that you dragged my sister into your twisted web of lies. Now you want to pull me into it as well. That's not going to happen. He will be told, even if I have to do it myself. He has a right to know who his biological father is. Everyone does. You're right. He will always be my son. If that's what he wants, he carries my last name, and I would never change that. I told her, however. You'll be carrying my last name for about 3 more months. I plan to divorce your lying ass as soon as possible. If you had come to me a year ago and told me what you found out, we might have been able to work through it. It would have been tough for a while, but mistakes happen. The fact that you lied and deceived me for the past year is unforgivable. You didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. And when there's no trust in a marriage, there's no marriage. You destroyed a good marriage, and for what? A dinner, a little dancing, and a lot of lies. As I already told my sister, I never want to talk to you again. You're dead to me, I said, heading down the stairs to the kitchen. Kev, it's time for us to have a little talk, I said to him. Dad, if this is about sex, I already know everything, he replied. Well, maybe not everything, I said, as I pulled up a chair and began to tell him the story of the birds and the bees. Thank you for listening until the end. See you in the next episode of Cheating Secrets. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Goodbye.